when looking at cases like this, it's hard for me to just base it off of what should be and what common sense ought to be. And I always default to how a prosecutor and a defense lawyer would play this out in court. Because unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. We've been taught several times that
Mhm.
it's not about what is right or wrong in a courtroom. It's about who has the better lawyer. Okay, we are officially recording, and today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic.
Yeah, it's been a
Uh,
while, first of all. We just
it's been a
wanted to
while.
address that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Sean and I saw each other in person. We'll probably talk about that in another episode because he was in Baguio for like a week. It was a great experience. Dude, I did not realize how great it is to live in Baguio until I came back to where I'm from, like down south. And it's so hot. And it's so hot. And then the water at noon is so hot. But like in Baguio,
Mhm.
it's like an ice bath. And I love ice baths. Like, dang, I might. I'm actually considering relocating because it's closer to Manila as well, and that's where a lot of the important events that I need for my career are happening.
Yeah.
So
And
it
would you
might.
say the internet service is faster there?
I think it's
Or is it
well.
about the
I
same?
think the internet service is about the same. Is about the same. Data though is a lot trickier because the way that data works is. With my phone, anywhere I go, I have data access. For in Baguio, like there's some spotty areas, and that's kind of like the thing, because it's still considered like a rural type development area.
Mhm.
The way that I think about it, it's like where I live, but like 15 years ago. Like if I go back 15 years ago, that's what my place used to look like. And it's interesting. Like
Mm.
I saw a sign where you have there's a surgery doctor who does surgery in like an apartment style building on the second floor that's similar to the place that we live. Could you imagine doing surgery in places like that?
I mean, it's a private practice, you know. It might look sloppy on the outside, but maybe in the inside it looks a lot
Like you're
better.
probably a professional, hopefully. And then there was a dentist too. Like it's a sketchy. I have a video of it. It's really sketchy looking, but like the dental office looks pretty professional.
I mean,
All
as long
right,
as it works, right? I think there's a lot of the maybe the presentation is lacking, but the skills necessary to do the work is there.
right,
The
yeah,
professionalism is there. It's just the presentation needs, you know, a touch up.
yeah. And the most important thing really is as long as you're getting what you paid for, which it seems to work. Everyone's doing their own small business. It's a time where corporations and big businesses have not yet taken over as much. And you know that because the Jollibee and the McDonald's close at 9 p.m. I've never seen a Jollibee that closes at 9 p.m. What the heck? All right. We're going to talk about this one video. Shown was actually the one who sent me this video. And we were thinking, okay, we were trying to argue who's at fault. We didn't tell each other what our thoughts was. We just said that, who do you think is at fault on this one? And we're going to play it. Let me just get it up right here. All right. Ooh. Oh.
It's a little bit laggy, but if you can talk us down on what's happening,
Yeah.
if
So
it's
this is.
lagging too much.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So should we play it again, or should we? Like,
Yeah,
is that
play it
guy?
again because I actually
Okay.
don't see what's happening. It's very
It's
laggy.
right in front of you. Okay. All right. So right here, there's obviously a performance that's going on. You see this guy. There we go. That guy right there. He's being pushed, and he lands. He lands on
Okay.
his spine, kind of.
Okay, I think I should kind of give some
Yeah.
context on this because it's actually so laggy that maybe you can see it clearly, but on
Oh,
my
your
end,
it's
it
mine.
is almost
Okay.
as if it's almost like every 2 frames we'll see something happening.
Yeah.
But so what has happened is there is a performance happening. It looks to be some sort of city, and so out of random, somebody from the side all of a sudden like kind of rushes up to try to get up on the stage. And then
Right.
as he gets up on the stage, it looks to be some security guard or maybe one of the other male performers pushes that guy, and then the guy falls off the stage and looks to have landed on his neck or on his spine.
Like right
And
here. Like that's the
assuming,
dangerous part.
yes, and assuming this story is correct, that is how this person, let's call him Jason, tragically lost his life. And looking at the comments, there seems to be this huge divide on who is at fault or what should have happened in this
Oh,
scenario. And then from there is where I would like Chris and I to have this discussion on what
okay.
our thoughts exactly happened regarding this particular video.
Okay. So I think I've you might not agree with me on this because you're so confident that you think that who's at fault here. For me, I'm also looking at the legal things.
Mhm.
I think the guy who pushed, so his name is Jason, the guy in the gold suit who got pushed to the ground and um passed
Who
away.
lost his life? Yes.
Yeah, who lost his life. Okay, I think it's the guy who pushed him who's at fault.
Mhm.
And he's the one to blame for this, and there's a lot of legal precedents for why I think that is. Okay, who do you think is at fault here?
Okay. So I think, well, it's kind of hard to see, especially the video being laggy, but I think it is so evident to me that it is Jason's himself's fault. It is unfortunate.
Mm,
I want to make sure
right,
that I want to contextualize this. It is unfortunate that the end result is that
right,
supposedly he died from
right,
this scenario. And but I think the majority of the cases is he would have gotten hurt or he would have been pushed down and nothing really would have happened from there.
right.
But
Okay,
in this specific scenario, he actually lost his life, which uh, makes the situation even more extreme. So, first and foremost, it is unfortunate that he passed away for something that looks very mundane or not necessary. On the other hand, however, he although he did not want to die, or even the other person that pushed him did not intend to kill him, it was primarily Jason's fault doing that thing that led to his death, because he did not like want to. And this is with my understanding that he's not part of the performance. He's not a friend of these performers. He just wanted to get up there, and who knew what was his real intentions were? Did he, like, would this story have changed if he had a gun or a knife or any form of weaponry? Because the point is, he went somewhere where he should not have gone, and then somebody tried to prevent him from going to where he wanted to go. And in this case, it was a push. Um, yes, maybe rather than pushing, the guy should have, could have, right? Um, Detained him in a safer manner, got him on the ground. So many myriad of what ifs. But in this, like maybe 10-15 second video, all of the pushing, the guy getting up to the stage really transpired within 3 seconds, if not less. And so many what ifs that we're talking about as we're laying here, able to analyze it in such a, like, as if this are people like who, like, there, no one knew his intentions. And he fell on his neck, and I think that caused his death. But he should not have done that in the first place. And so, and yes, there's the legalities of it. What the guy did was actually considered manslaughter. I think it's pretty evident. But at the same time, we kind of, as a society, have to kind of step back and think he that situation would not have happened if Jason himself did not create that situation to begin with. Um, but yes, Chris, I kind of want to hear more about what you were going to say regarding the legalities on this, or also on how it's that the pusher's fault. Oh, you're also muted, Chris.
Okay, so if you're gonna be like a defense lawyer, right? You're gonna be defending. So let's say you're a defense lawyer. You're defending the guy who pushed Jason, causing him his death, and you're gonna explain. Okay, we have to realize that there was a potential danger. If I was gonna be the prosecutor would look at two things. The first thing that he would look at is he would have to look if there was reasonable force. Like you could defend someone, but you're kind of allowed to defend yourself to the extent where you eliminate the threat. And so by pushing the person, he realizes that there's a threat. There's also the thing where you have to use reasonable force. And what the prosecutor is going to do if this case does go to trial, he's going to he's going to bombard questions towards the guy like, did you feel like it was reasonable? Was there malintent? Were you like trying, like, if you were even like trying to show off your strength, kind of, or you felt like if the prosecutor could find that you could have hesitated or um like minimized the force that you've exerted into pushing that person, but you didn't minimize that force, then prosecutor could find you liable for that person's death. And so that's the first key element that they're going to have to look out for. And there's a way to make it look like it was really malintent, other than just defending the person. The other thing that they're going to look at is they're going to look at whether or not you are an authorized person to defend such an individual. This is going off of moral and ethics. Like this is not yet going to that. This is just going to legally. If you look back into the video, you'll see that the security people, you could easily identify them because they wear these vests, these bright yellow green vests, and on the front and on the back it says security. That is very important because it notifies and lets people know that these are the people in charge and guaranteeing the safety. The thing that I'm having trouble understanding is why there wasn't security in place, like right at the front. Like normally in situations like this, you have security everywhere, and you could
uh,
easily notice them. That's
uh-huh.
that's that, that's an interesting thing. Like that's a big question that I have. Like, why is security not posted all around where you could easily see them? Why is it that it had to be this individual? And the other thing is, like, this individual is not security. He is not
Mhm.
authorized. He is not recognized by the public to be able to defend. And therefore, the person who was killed in this incident was thinking there was no one to stop him. He was not in the proper state of mind and therefore
Mhm.
think he could get away with it. If there had been security, if the guy was wearing a security vest, would he have done the same thing?
Uh-huh. I
So
think
that's how
I'm
they
hearing what you're
that
saying.
help play in.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. So I think as I'm talking about it, I'm not necessarily talking about it about with legalities because I
right,
understand what you're saying. Because
right,
in this case, the victim, there should be some sort of recompense for
yes,
the victim's family, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not looking at it from that legal perspective. Rather, I'm
right,
looking at it from like a moral perspective, where and you're talking about why aren't there more security guards, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's because people are decent folk. I think it's because people are not thinking that somebody's going to go up there and really, try to create become a terrorist or try to create harm to these performers. I think there's all of this accumulated into something we call civil society,
okay, yeah,
and that's why. And I think we're adding all these like if there were more security guards, would he have not done this? I think those things are just not um, it doesn't really matter. The point is the guy, even if there's 50 more security guards, even if there's cameras all around, he did the
mm,
thing that he did. And somebody wanted to protect, maybe they're like he's a performer, he's
right,
he's up there on the stage. He can be there on the stage. He saw a threat, somebody like climbing up to the stage, doesn't 100% know, not thinking about the legal recourses of what's happening, and rather has just that human moment to analyze the situation. Somebody's coming up to the stage that's not supposed to be coming there, and tried to get him away from the stage. And I think in most
Mhm.
cases, it will not result in death. In most cases, what's going to happen is he gets pushed, maybe he lands on his butt, like does not die. He lands there, and then there's going to be other people eventually coming down to kind of detain that person. I think in most people's minds, that is what's going to
Right.
happen, right? The thing that exasperates this whole situation is the fact that he died. But I think that fact, like one in 1,000, one in 10,000 chances, like that, such an
Mhm.
unnatural fall happened, is why I wanted to kind of bring this video up. Why I wanted to talk about this, because we're talking like a 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000 chances, when normally people would fall not in that way, or a slight angle, and he would have just been bruised but not dead.
I mean, I
And then
see
I
your
want
point where it's not supposed to happen, but the thing is, like, I'm perplexed because you don't want to see it through a legal lens, but I'm
well,
kind of I'm
even
kind of
with that,
forced to.
even with that legal lens, I think that as though somebody reasonable from the outside, and I don't have that legal knowledge, but just looking at it from somebody who has lived life walking across the street, looking at that and recognizing that guy was being stupid, doing a
Right.
stupid action. The other person is doing something more natural. And I think a lot of us, seeing the comments, we're talking about how that guy could have done X, Y, and Z. Yet also, I see it as natural to push somebody away when they should not have been there in the first place. And once again,
Right.
the thing that makes this whole situation more exasperated is the fact that he died. If he did not die, I think it is so obvious for everybody to see that he is so in the wrong. He should not have tried to get up there. He should not have tried to, like, who knows? I think especially in this case where at this time, like, he has no weapons. He didn't have anything on him. It's more we can sympathize more with him because, like, oh, he just maybe wanted to get up on the stage, but we in that situation, in those few seconds, no one knew his intentions.
Right.
Like, how come we're in some ways, when I see this and I see so many people defending him, I think about all the other what ifs that could have made it even worse. What if he did have a gun? What if he was there to cause terror? Like, what if he wanted to hurt somebody there? And all these things, like, once
Mhm.
again, are what ifs. And in this case, the reality that happened is the person has died because of the fall. Looks like it. And you were mentioning about maybe mental health, or he maybe did drugs or something. I think that's really irrelevant because he should not have been there. The person pushed them away, and unfortunately, like, he's gonna have all this. He's gonna get all this slack from other people.
Right.
Um, I like. It's unfortunate that he's. You can see it. He's responsible for the death, but I think from a legal recourse as well. And if a judge sees this, I see this also as this was a an accident that was not necessarily caused by the pusher. Um, and if there was supposed to be some sort of recompense, maybe a year or two max, because I don't
Mm.
think because that one person's life was already kind of ruined, but the dead person. But
Right.
I don't think necessarily that we should ruin the other person's life in this scenario, in this specific case, because he was there defending what looks to be the performers, and maybe, like, he was just defending the performers. He was there. He's allowed to be there. He's
Mm.
starting to stop somebody who's getting there. And then would this case be even better if he was security guard? If he was a security guard, like, I think it's
It
gonna be
would.
exactly the same. It would be exactly the same if he had a security guard jacket. Nothing would have changed. Rather, um, there's a more specific reason why, like, maybe that security guard, uh, that individual is going to be more
Right.
at fault anyways. So nothing would have
Okay.
changed. I think people are just trying to find a way to be more sympathetic to the victim, but really forget. But by doing so, they're trying to put blame where it should not have been, which is the pusher.
See, the way that you're framing it is you're looking at it through an ethical and moral lens. Do you know why it's so hard to base things off of
Yes.
what should be right? So there's what should be right, and there's what ought to be right, like what we wish an idyllic world would be. The problem with that is that it's not so much rooted on reality, because everyone has different ethics and morals, and because of that there's this clash of ideas. Where we seem to understand and agree on is what the law is stated. I disagree that what you said, where if the guy was wearing a security jacket, it would have made a difference. It would have made a lot of significant difference in the eyes of the law. When a prosecutor tries to see this, he will clearly see that this person was therefore authorized to do this. It makes so much difference in a courtroom, because you have to think, in a courtroom, it doesn't matter what is right or wrong. Like, people get this idea where
Mhm.
it's like right or wrong. No, it's like based on the laws that we have and are given. This is why in
Uh-huh.
some places, like where this is why where you're prosecuted in the United States matters so much, because state laws differ, from
Mhm.
state to state. And so you have to go with the legal battle. In this case, if I was the prosecutor, this is the way that I would have seen it, and that's what would have gone off. I really invested and can't wait to see, like, do you know those lawyer reaction videos that they usually post? Like,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that someone would pick this up and show who would be liable in this case. I have a couple, like, there was a couple of lawyers
I
that I
mean,
have in
isn't
mind.
this self-defense? I think if anything, like I'm talking about him as if he wasn't also defending himself.
See, the key there is
I
like
just see this as I see.
self
Yes, I
defense.
think it's self-defense and also defending others in addition to himself. Because the point being, the person was not supposed to be there. And I think about this. Maybe I'm going to be conflating two separate situations, but
Right.
it kind of reminds me of situations where, let's say, a bunch of teens starts trying to rob somebody's house
All right.
at night, banging, opening the door, and then the homeowner who has a gun shoots at them and maybe kills one, hurts another, and then the last one, like let's say there's three of them, gets
Okay.
off scot free. And then lo and behold, the parents of these teenagers are now suing that homeowner when the homeowner was simply defending himself, especially at
Right.
that time period. And like, why would you expect anything less than like somebody that you're not expecting at a certain time banging, screaming, opening your door? What are you gonna expect? Oh, maybe it was just a prank. It was just a prank, right? I think
Right.
that does not fly with people with common sense. And I think what's happening here is maybe I am conflating these two separate scenarios, but how I see it is so obvious on the first example with the homeowner, and I think it's so similar. It's very similar to this, where in a more public area, people are expected to
Mhm.
enjoy themselves, move around on the confines, that they need to be behind that barricade. They have to be like, because people need to be protected, the performers. Maybe they're not so big that they don't have 50 security guards. Yeah, that's called the economy.
Okay.
They're just not that big enough to get that. So they should
Okay.
have a level of security and privacy in that they can perform in a safe manner. That
Okay.
person was just fulfilling a human duty of
So,
self-defense between him and the performers.
okay, what you did right there, that's actually a pretty good defense. If you're going to be a defense lawyer, that's a good statement where you work with what you have, and you outline what is the perimeter and what is like trespassing. It's good that you mentioned that there's a barrier set up, and that these barriers indicate that you are not supposed to go beyond this, anything beyond that, and you are therefore responsible. You therefore take accountability of what happens to you, be it the loss of life or any injury that happens, because that barrier right there, like what you said, it should signal that this is a no trespassing zone. There should be a lot, like, if you were also a defense lawyer, what you think one thing that you want to do, you want to look for the footage where he actually trespassed, and you want to look for the footage because this was like a 30-second video. You want to look
Yes.
for like the 2-minute video
Oh,
of this,
yes.
and that would be very critical evidence to show that
Mhm,
this person is innocent. There was a
mhm,
threat because that barrier was what they went past this barrier, and so that would be the other thing you'd have to do is if you were defending the guy who pushed Jason, right? This is the mental stigma because at the moment, what if Jason was thinking that he was trying to defend? Later on in hindsight, as he rethinks it over and over again, people will get the mental stimulus that, shoot, maybe it was my fault. Maybe I did do something wrong. They're going beyond the facts and they start to self loathe or self imply this
mhm,
self guilt upon themselves. Your job as a defense lawyer would have to be to convince him that it wasn't your fault. Don't give in to what your psychology is telling you that you
mhm,
probably could have done it a better way. Listen to what happened in that 3 second span, like what you said, like focus on that 3 second span and make the defendant focus on that,
mhm,
because when prosecutor comes and it's ruthless, when you're on that seat,
mhm,
it is a ruthless interrogation to make you look guilty, and they will twist the questions as well. For example, they could ask, did have you never thought of hurting another, taking another person's life? And if you, so that's the dangerous thing. Like if you say, if the prosecutor asks, you never thought of taking another person's life, if you say yes to that, then that's a very dangerous thing, because never is like you've never done it, like you've never even had these thoughts, like when you're angry or so, and they
mhm.
could nail you to that. You have to be very, very careful of to the questions and to how you respond, and that's interesting when that gets on to the court. I think there's a good chance that there will be like a settlement case that this would not be brought up to
Oh,
court, like through a. I,
I,
I wish it
maybe.
would.
Well, I think like we're just also talking about kind of separate issues here because
Right.
like you're talking about the state legalities.
Right.
Those legalities are created by people,
Yeah.
and I think from a very normal, common sense type of person, like looking at it from a third party, just looking at
Okay.
that situation, it seems to me so obvious that there's no need to even get really. There's not even a need to make it more complicated than it is.
I wish
Um,
that was the case.
no,
Like,
sure, but I'm not talking about it from that legal perspective.
right.
Rather, it's more of a hey, this is what society like. Here, there's now all these cameras, all these phones that we have. We can
Mm,
see what has happened, and like we're so focused on the end result that we forget like some really basic common sense stuff. He should not have done that. There's so many what ifs. Like there's a performance going to be happening. Don't obviously get on that stage if you're not
okay.
supposed to be on that stage, because there's so many once again legalities that that
Right.
person could have. Because then you're talking about that now, and then like how I'm already thinking about it is oh like so then we're gonna have to go and dig into every single person's past. If that
Right.
person, for example, was he ever doing anything in terms of drug dealing
All
or
right.
any sort of like how many DUIs? Like, you're trying to now establish character, and
Right.
I think even all that is just not relevant. The most important thing is he did X, the other person did Y to prevent X. And is that justifiable? And I think it's so obvious and it's only so outlandish to other people, especially looking at the comments, because I just so disagree with the majority of the likes. The majority of the likes on that comment is they are saying they're practically getting pitchforks and knives uh, to the person that pushed Jason. And
Okay.
I'm just thinking that person who pushed Jason is a normal person just that wanted to defend that scenario.
Okay.
Just like you and me. If some I'm just thinking about it just like right now. If somebody walks up to you looking dangerous, right? And looking like he's about to punch you, it's like, should you punch them back for self-defense? And all of a sudden it's like, oh no, it was just a prank. He like and you punching them actually caused that death. It's like, but looking at from all these angles, that person looked like he was gonna punch you. You just happened to self-defend yourself first. So should you wait to get
Right.
injured first? And I'm thinking, like, obviously not. Any rational human being can come up with that. It doesn't require any degree or anything. It just requires living life. And this is what I
So
mean by like, it's so obvious to me that he threw that first punch by getting up there in the first place. And it was unfortunate that the end result was he was KO'd like for a lifetime
right,
with that push. And it's not like I just cannot. I understand what people are saying. I highly disagree, and I sometimes think like, what kind of life have they been living to the point that they're defending the person that could have done something bad. And the good thing about this particular example, I think, also is just the fact that it was two people of the same race. Because then, can you
right.
imagine how much worse the story would have been if it was two different races, particularly black and white, particularly the pusher being white? And
If this was in
see,
California, this would have been a very
all these
dangerous
things to
case.
me, I, the race did not matter. If it was male, female, really, it wouldn't have mattered too much. Um, just the fact that like, the person tried to get up to say that's the end of story. Person tried to get
Right.
somewhere where they should not have, and then somebody defended that. That's the end of story. And the fact that like we've been talking about this for about like for a while already, but that we've complicated it to something bigger than it is. And I think this is one of those like one and done scenarios. Like obvious, this is like you, sir, try to defend yourself. You should not be charged. You're free to go.
Right.
Unfortunate,
Okay.
unfortunate for that family. Like, seriously, I think me agreeing with the push does not mean that you can't be sympathetic to the person because like
Who passed away? Yeah,
he
that's
could be
definitely
an amazing person. I don't know him. He had a lot of potential to live for. He
right.
just did that one dumb thing, and unfortunately, that
Right.
defense was just fatal. Like,
Okay.
how many times have we been pushed with friends or got in a situation, and we've lived to tell the tale, right? That's just so unfortunate. That's all it is how I see it.
Right. The other thing, like I like how you see things in like like it's supposed to be a common sense view where obviously this is what's supposed to happen. The thing is, our world, at least the world that we've built, everything upon, is not based on common sense, and this is something that is this is very complicated. So there was I don't know if you've heard about this case. There was a case where a student was raped. Okay, so this was like in the
Okay, that's pretty
1990s.
big.
Okay, so this is a
Okay.
student who got raped.
Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, you'd think that the person who raped her should be found guilty and sent to prison, right? But this
Mm-hmm.
is where things this is where for me the beginning of the loss of where we view things from a common sense lens into more of a legality lens.
Mm-hmm.
That student reported it to campus security. Campus security did nothing about it. There was nothing. She was raped again. She didn't go to the proper authorities. This person who
Multiple
raped her,
times?
like, apparently it happened twice. She
Uh-huh.
reported it. She reported it again. This time to different authorities. Something, but because she reported it the wrong way, it didn't go up the proper chain of command, and it didn't go where it was supposed to be. And there was not a lot of evidence to support her, like in her case, or like it wasn't in her favor. And because the guy who raped her had a very, very, very good lawyer. He was the
Mm-hmm.
son of a rich person. There could afford a really good lawyer. Made it look like it was her fault, and it was the kid, like, or maybe not her fault, but like the case was just dismissed because, like, oh, it
But
was like
wait, I think I want to clarify because I mean that is school policy, and then there's a difference between school policy and like
there's school
legal like
security,
legalities,
and
right?
yeah,
I
there's
mean,
school security for it.
she should in this case, right? Like whatever school security says, whatever. The most important thing is that it actually gets to the proper authorities, which is the police. So are you
Right.
saying that she
It
did
didn't
not
get
reach
to
out
the
to the police?
She did not
Okay.
reach out to police. She reported to campus security, and because of that one thing, it's common sense, right? Rape is bad. The person who raped her should go to jail. common sense. There's enough evidence to support that. But because you reported it to the clown of campus security, this is like to everyone out there. I don't trust campus. I trust campus security for my safety as much as I can trust an ant to defend me.
Mhm.
And because of that, there was no justice in that scenario.
Well,
That was for
how come she couldn't just call back the police once
there was
justice
a
wasn't made?
there was another issue about it, and because like it was I think it was, she was, there, because there was already a case for it. It's hard to listen to her again because there was already a ruling for it.
No, I mean,
Something because
I
like
think that's a separate issue. I mean,
no,
like
like what
we're
I'm
talking
saying
about
is
school
like,
policy here. Hmm.
yeah, like what I'm saying, what I'm saying with that is that that's, you know when looking at cases like this, it's hard for me to just base it off of what should be and what common sense ought to be, and I always default to how a prosecutor and a defense lawyer would play this out in court, because unfortunately that's just the world we live in. We've been taught several times that
Hmm.
it's not about who, what is right or wrong in a courtroom. It's about who has the better lawyer, because that's
I'm not
just
sure
how
about
it is
that.
nowadays.
Like, I think there is that idea that you need some competent lawyers, but I think also the law is made by people, and if we can't really see something so obvious and like kind of address it, and if something
Right.
appears really obvious but is actually more complicated than it seems, we got to address that as well. um, and so with that being said, I think it's important, like, for people to kind of recognize what they can and can't do. And I think, like, you as a person living in your country, your state
Hmm.
or your local province, you're a part of that. I think there's a lot of people maybe talking about the system does this or that. You're part of that system,
Right.
and you're what is it? Not doing anything about the problem is part of the problem.
Right.
Um, and so, like, you have to stand up for it. It kind of reminds me also of how, like, judges, like, in some ways, like, kind of putting more with the religious side of it, judges are the intermediators, like almost
Uh-huh.
as if they are God in terms of a situation, and we are trying to replicate godhood as much as possible. And so with a
Right.
good judge, although imperfect, as being an imperfect human being, if they're doing the best they can, I think society is going to do even better. And if the judge is not doing what they should be doing, like the opposite of a godhood, it's
Hmm.
it's a sign of collapse for that society. And in this case with
Right.
that rape, I am very I'm very against, like, two particular crimes, which is the crime of ending a person's life, as well as the crime of
Right.
creating life without the consent of another. And so those two to me are the absolute highest forms of criminal activity you can do between your fellow man.
Hmm.
Um, and in the case of this one in particular, like, I mean, I think rape is probably the highest form, if not, like,
Right.
compared. And then with that, um, the ending of another fellow man's life, but then with a lot of context is really important. While the other one, which is rape, there's no context at all where that's going to be at all fine. While the other one, the ending of somebody's of your fellow man's life, it could be the context of self-defense,
Right.
protecting your property, protecting another person. Like, there's so many contexts there. And I mean, in this case, it seems as though that person got away, but I mean, that's one of those things where we need to kind of look back into it. And I think, like, we reprioritize certain laws. I mean, but that's just me without any
Right.
legal,
Okay.
like foreknowledge and all these stuff. I think we just got to prioritize what's actually important in the law books to
Right.
prevent those things from happening. But at the same time, rape is that's a really, really big accusation. It is really, really big. So
Right.
with that said, if one were to accuse somebody of that horrible crime, there has to be a lot of evidence. There has to be a lot of evidence. But at the same time, if there is absolutely no evidence and you can't just say that willy-nilly, there has to be something
Right.
happening to you if you kind of accuse somebody without any form of evidence whatsoever, and you just start try to kind of ruin their life. I think you
Right.
need to have some sort of repercussion with that. You can't just get away scot-free. And
There's definitely
I
going
think
to
that's
be
a
some
comment.
psychological
I think that's the
repercussion to it.
well, no, I mean
Oh.
like you as the accuser,
Oh.
um, like you need to have some sort of you need to pay like if what you're saying it well, let's use some common sense here.
Okay.
If there are some evidence but it's not enough, you probably nothing should happen to you person, like nothing legally should happen to you. But if there's
Hmm.
absolutely no evidence whatsoever and you're just calling people out for no reason, maybe trying to make a mess of the legal system, trying to ruin somebody else's life, I think there should be something legally should happen to you in which you accuse somebody of this heinous crime. You can't
Yeah,
just
that's
walk away from it. It's like, oh, my bad, just my bad. It's like, that doesn't fly.
there's
I
actually a
think
law for
especially.
that. Depending on what if you say it, it's slander. But if it's like
Mhm,
written on a social media post or like a media outlet,
mhm.
then it's libel. And yeah,
Yeah,
you could like the thing that I thought about is the Andrew Tate case, where there was this female, right? Like she was saying that this guy raped her and stuff, but turns out it wasn't true. Like, and
I'm not sure.
I'm
So
not
so
I'm not completely
I
sure
have my
about
own
that.
thoughts with him. I have my own thoughts
Okay.
with Andrew Tate because I think as a character, he has done some horrible things that he has admitted online. Um, and it's one of those things where like, are you a liar or did you actually do it? So if you're a liar, it kind of takes away
Your
all these
credibility. Yeah,
extravagant things that you supposedly you've done. But if you actually did those things, it's like,
you
well,
could be put in jail.
you should be put in jail. Like what
Yeah.
you've done is not great.
So
But that's going to be another topic.
yeah, it's yeah that will. And the thing is, like you know, this is why I feel sorry for the lawyers. Like this is we had this conversation before. Like if and this is why we have safeguards in place. Like number one, the thing that I'd like to people to know is you have to know the law and you have to put safeguards for yourself and for the people you know so that you don't end up breaking the law or you don't end up incriminating yourself because
uh,
the problem here's
mhm,
the like I'd like to live for us to live in a world where it was common sense, like it was obvious not right or but you have to know a person's intentions, and that part is very very tricky. That's why we have
mhm,
the law to rely on, and what the law says would point your intentions towards too. So first of all, know what the law is and put safeguards so that you can
mhm,
protect yourself legally. The other thing where you said is that where a person or individual needs to know the law so that they could possibly change it or at least invoke change. That is going to take years. It's going to be hard and you might
mhm,
not reap the fruits of it, but your children will. And that's the other thing, like if you see that there's something wrong with the law, you could definitely change it, and you have to at least do something actively about it. Be active in your community.
mhm. Well,
Start with
I
saying
think
what's right and wrong.
I think at some point though, what we're asking of people is like a death of a thousand cuts. Like, so we're expecting, uh, like maybe young men, young women to know
All
all
right.
these should be's, all
All
these
right.
knowledge that they should be doing so they could be successful. In addition,
Right.
they need to be a good citizen to their country, which is a given, but then to also know more about the law, to know all about these liabilities, to know
Because that's
all
just
these
the way
situations that
we live.
could happen. But that is simply asking for too much. I think it's very obvious where we're asking too much of that. This is why, rather than the law, like we should simplify the law in a way that certain principles, um, kind of, if you act on those certain principles, they automatically kind of abide by certain laws.
Right.
And rather
So
than knowing every little thing, like for example, does everybody read the terms and conditions on everything they sign?
no,
You know
probably
what?
most likely not.
Obviously not. Like it's that
It's hard.
example where like we have to live in a world where it's always like that. Like I think
Yeah.
there is the common sense law. I don't know how else to describe it, where it's like in this situation, um like this thing is bad, and so um everything like that's going to happen about it is just simply bad. And
Okay.
obviously different states, different providence, we're going to have different laws, but there's like that level of common sense to it. And I think when we lose that common sense and we're being
Right.
so specific, we're talking about semantics at this point, then we start losing the purposes of those laws. It's like the law of Moses, right? And then
Right. Okay.
like we need specific little things to address a particular issue. And thankfully we're not like the United States is not like that. We don't need specific every little minute detail of
Mm-hmm.
something to be part of the law. Rather, it's the idea of it. And I think this is why
Right.
it's really important that we actually have common sense judges that are able to uh, differentiate between who they are and then who they're going to be representing when they're a judge.
My
'Cause
advice for people actually is like even if my advice for people is just to simplify is just get a good lawyer. If you can't, like it's impossible, right, to be able to know this yourself. But like for me, like the bigger you get and the more income you make, my my first thing that I would tell you is to get a good lawyer to be able to know these for you and to be able to help you out of tough situations like this. Because like you could be the most law-abiding citizen,
mm,
but because you're a big player, people will target you. People will try and sue you for the littlest things. Did you know, like last year of the U.S. GDP, 3% of that was from court fees and legal battles.
well, I
It's
think
not
it's
a
not,
whole lot. It's
but it's not court fees and legal battles for the small
it,
person. These are corporations against
yeah,
corporations.
but the thing, like the thing that it made 3%, and that we're like charging, like we're at the point where everyone could sue anyone for anything. Not in the Philippines, maybe. I'm
But
kind of grateful for that,
I
but
mean,
in the U.S.,
see from
that's the
what you
case.
just but what you're just describing now, I just now that feels like a pay to play system where it's no longer justice and mercy blind.
It's
It's
not.
it's a pay to play. I mean, in the U.S., I know that if you cannot afford a lawyer, it is going to be given to you, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a level of common sense in which the defendant has to dress in a certain way just for like
Right.
psychology reasons, where they're a normal looking person.
Right.
That's why the
It's
suits
like the
are
bias that
encouraged.
people have. Like you're facing a jury of 12
Yes,
supposedly
and
unbiased people.
part of that, however, is like there is a way that they chose those 12 juries.
Yeah,
So
jury
it's not
selection.
like mhm, with the jury selection. So there's all these processes on why they chose this person and that person, because they
Right.
know that they have biases as well.
Right.
It just like I don't want to get into the legalities of it because I'm not a lawyer, but I think there is so many common sense ideas out there, and if we just need to have the best ideas like fighting each other, everything else falls in line. In the case of
Right.
this death, right? It's like what is the alternative? Because I think one or the other. Um, if we reward the fact that the person that pushed is going to be going to jail for like a lifetime or like 10-20 years,
Right.
I think that's showing that hey, like persons like don't if it's not directly like self-defending yourself
Mm-hmm.
or even others, like let it happen. And I don't want to live in a world where like that crazy person who knew what he was going to do or like maybe you're in a subway and somebody's acting out on
Okay.
a strange, like I mean this was a big one, like in New York, right, where
Right.
this crazy person says that he's going to be stabbing people. He says he's going to stab people. Somebody out there went out and detained him, but now he's getting punished for detaining him.
Right.
That
Yeah.
is stupid law. That is
And
stupidity.
right.
Where
Unfortunately,
okay,
that's
like
the law
oh,
you have to
legally
live
speaking,
by.
oh, yeah. So it's like, hey, so what should you be doing? And this is where the balance between ethics and morals with the law comes in, because I think any decent person that has the ability to would detain that person. You're literally screaming out to the top of your lungs in this subway station that you're gonna
Okay.
stab somebody with the knife that you're holding,
In your hand. Yeah. Okay.
and yet somebody detains you, and now it seems as though social media is against the person detaining the other person. So we're looking at it as if whoever is the you're a victim if you get the lower end of the stick. In this case, on the example that we saw,
Right.
you're dead. You actually died, and so everybody's going to be showing their virtue by
Right.
by calling for justice on the other person.
Right.
Where I think
And
justice in that sense was the fact that it was unfortunate that you got pushed, like, but that was the justice that at that collective moment what people were looking for.
right.
And I think there's a lot of this fake virtuous stance that people are starting to do, and I think it's hurting them a lot more than they are
Right.
really letting on. Like
So
there's a lot of this. Mhm.
that's the problem. Like I wish we would resolve first, because like
Well, how do we solve it?
going back to the like the solution, like first of all, we need to be aware, we need to know that there are consequences for having such laws, and we need to know what it brings up. Again, it goes
Mhm.
back to people, like unfortunately, like yeah, it's
Well,
asking too much of people to understand the law and understand the economics and understand how this plays out in the real world. Yes, it's a lot. Unfortunately, it's the thing that we need people to do if we're going to create a society where they build more sensible laws. Because, like you
well,
said, if we keep feeling pity for the lowest victim in a situation without actually looking through the repercussions that these laws will make for future generations, then we're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So we really need to have some sort of understanding of how this would play out
well,
first.
no,
Yeah.
I think, like, I mean, like, so what is the solution? And what I am proposing is more in terms of like this social media outrage.
Okay.
There it needs to be a countercultural idea of that outrage. People are
Mm-hmm.
calling for this guy. Like, let's say the people that are calling for Jason's pusher for justice,
Okay.
like let's say like 1,000 likes, let's say.
Okay.
But then the people that are actually sensible, how I see it, sensible that they're defending the guy is only getting, let's say, 200 likes. So you can see there's like a one to
Right.
five people that are, how I see it, are more sensible compared to this outrage mob. And I think there
Right.
needs to be
Okay.
more people that are willing to kind of put their name out there. Oh, but at the same time, I recognize that there is that putting a target in your back. But then if
Right.
too many good people do nothing, that's the kind of thing that we're gonna get more often. More people probably
Right.
gonna be doing like more crazy things like that to get more clout. What's gonna happen is more people are gonna be going up on a performance. Maybe they don't die, but they're there to get the cloud to be the menace that they are, so they can have more followers. Like I think we've already seen a lot of that as well. I mean, if you're not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with that story with Vitaly going to the
Oh yeah, I
Philippines,
know
being
that
an
very
absolute
very well.
menace. I mean, being an absolute menace there. I mean, the Philippines aren't taking that disrespect, but there's so many
Yeah.
other countries that have that kind of thing in Japan or even here in the U.S. And see those good people that you've been saying, like, oh, legally we should think about this. Well, I think at some point there needs to be a level of common sense, and I
Right.
think
Okay.
everybody's has been too accommodating that they have lost the ability to really think straight, to think that
Okay.
um, these things are not appropriate. This thing is disrespectful.
Okay.
and you need to be stopped. Because like we're at a point where, like in that example earlier, like we're waiting for somebody to punch us in the face before we can actually defend ourselves. Like, like if somebody is like looking down at you, like with glaring eyes, with fists clenched, like in a position that looks like he's gonna punch you or something, I
Mm-hmm.
think you're in the right to defend yourself. And unfortunately, maybe like like the angle of the punch or whatever, like anybody can
Right.
see that and just be and recognize like that's not cool. You killing him was so not cool. Like that's gonna hurt you a lot.
Right.
But the fact that it kind of looked like that, like just for all this evidences and all that,
Right.
it's common sense that you have the right to defend yourself, and not just yourself, your property, your family, and like from what I've been hearing from you, Chris, it just sounds more like uh, sit in the wayside until everything gets better. But nothing's gonna get better until people start. Like I think there's so many more people that have common sense than not. I think there's a lot of people that have this common sense, but the thing is, they have that fear, like what you were mentioning about getting ousted, or
Right.
and now they have a target in their back. Which, yes, oh my gosh, it would suck, and it's hard to kind of put it in our minds that we do need to stand up for something, or we stand with no foundation whatsoever. Um, and we just got to remember like that we have to stand for those foundational things that, in particular, the United States kind of stands for: life,
Mm-hmm.
liberty, and not property, per se, like life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. I don't know. It just feels really wrong when advocating for that other side.
See, the thing is, I would like the thing I would blame for that as well. Like you said, how there's not a lot of people who would defend the guy who pushed Jason to his death. Like I'm just gonna call it like that. Um, do you know where I think that this started? I think it started when we started arresting people for what they say on social media,
I
because
don't think the
even as
U.S. does that.
no,
The,
it
the
does.
United
They
Kingdom,
did.
the United
They
Kingdom has done that.
The United
The
Kingdom
United
has
Kingdom has
that,
done.
but like the US actually started it. There was a case where this
Mm-hmm.
one person, it was during the elections of Trump versus Clinton. Clinton was like, yeah, Hillary Clinton.
So
Um,
2016. Well,
yeah, this is 2016. You know what this guy posts? Okay, I'm gonna look it up. This guy posts and says, for voting Clinton, don't forget to call this number, and it was obviously a prank. Like prank call Clinton
uh,
to vote. Hang on.
I don't
Yeah.
like. I already don't like where this is going just because of the prank idea.
No, no,
Because
no. Hey,
I
hey, hey.
don't think that. Okay,
I,
let's
I
hear
think I
it.
think we need I need to like I'm just gonna state like where this all started from.
Mm-hmm.
And I really I hate that this has happened in the US. Yeah, okay. So is uh this is a picture of it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so someone posts this on Twitter, and I think some of this also lies because of social media companies. They lean too much far to the left in censoring. Like another thing is like we have social media companies who censor a lot of the posts and comments from the right, and there's not
Mm-hmm.
much censorship on the left. When Elon bought Twitter, one of the things he commented about was that he saw a lot of the stuff that was censored. 90% was Republicans, and was or
Mm-hmm.
90% more often Republicans posts were censored, and instead of like the Democrats. This person right here, so this person posts this as a prank, like as a joke. It's clearly a joke because who in their right mind would think that you could vote from home? You obviously have to go to like a
Mm-hmm.
station and cast your vote. Who in their
I
right
mean, I'm
mind
not
would
sure
think you
that
could do that?
that's not necessarily obvious, because I can see on the idea that, hey, we're living in the 21st century. Why do we have to
Okay.
be in line for this? So I
So
can see
maybe that was
it's
the
not that
argument.
obvious, but keep going.
Maybe that was the justification for the arrest. The person was arrested and thrown in jail. He
Uh huh.
was thrown in jail for this. I don't know how long he was in there. But he went online and said, "Yeah, I made this post, and now I was thrown in jail for it." And there was even a comment that says, "Yeah, this is what happened." And so if if we're gonna have to have if we want more people to stand up online for what is right and what is sensibly common sense, what should be done, then we have to fix the censorship issue, and that's calling out
I
to
mean,
Meta, that's calling out to
sure.
X, and it's calling out to other
I,
platforms. Reddit heavily like censors a lot of things, and it's,
sure, but
where's our
I think that's
freedom
a
of speech
completely
for
separate
this?
issue. I
That
mean,
for that
that's a separate thing. I mean, I'm not sure where that person was arrested in. I mean, like, I don't agree in him being arrested,
right,
but like, I need more context on this per se, because, for example, free speech does not mean free of consequences. You cannot
yes,
yell out fire in a movie theater and then say like, "Oh, it's a prank, bro." Like it was just a
right,
joke.
or
Like
like
there
yelling
are
bomb at the airport,
consequences. Exactly. So this freedom of
right,
speech thing, I think people need to better understand exactly what it means. I mean, this seems to be a satire. So like, I think people have on both sides probably have been arrested, but that does not necessarily mean like, yeah, it could have been better, the institute, but I think as a whole the institute does not reward or punish that kind of thing. Like if you put it in social
right,
media, not to the extent that, let's say, the United Kingdom actually has it in their laws, in which you cannot
right,
misgender, things like that. Well, here in the US, I think people can just look at it and be like, okay, they agree or disagree, but it's not a call for you being in prison. I think
right,
that's completely different. Because I mean, you can put something down, uh, asking for the murder or violence against a certain group of people. I think
right,
you should be like, you should be arrested for that. If you are calling for the violence of a group of people, or like just calling out for violence, I think that's
right,
very obvious common sense thing. But if you have, like, let's say the economy side, where you think that a stock is going to go up and you tell everybody to buy a certain stock, I don't think that's necessarily um, imprisonment worthy. I think that there's,
really,
so this is like the kind of, well, because you're just stating your opinion. What's an opinion compared to asking people for violence for something? You could say that Tesla is going to the moon and then it doesn't. Should you be
depends on your
arrested for
career.
that? I really don't think so.
Depends on your career
Uh,
background, because I could tell you from a financial career perspective that if
mhm.
you have a financial background and you have some credibility with a company or so because you work at this company, the company could actually hold you liable for
Of course,
that. Yeah,
of course. But I think there's a difference between you, your own thoughts, and then being a representative of something. Just like, I
so,
think I'm going to put this more with religion, just like how the 12 apostles, 15 really,
right,
um, they can share their own opinions on something, but that does
right,
not mean that that is the stance of of the apostle of Jesus Christ, of like of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is not the stance of the church, but that could be their opinion on a certain thing. Like that's why
see,
there's a difference between
yeah,
like their profession and your own personal opinion. And yes, there is the level of professionalism that you should do if you're like a stockbroker
actually,
and all
uh,
this, finance stuff.
yeah,
But you can have your own stance on it. You could, for example, be anonymous and like share your thoughts on this or that. It kind of depends, right? Like you shouldn't have the information that you should have. You can't necessarily just say out loud.
right,
Um, but there's a certain level to it in which you think, for example, U.S. U.S. versus the world, like which ETF you should go for. I think that it's also so broad that you can still have a stance on it without being crucified just because of your
for
profession.
yeah, for ETFs, like that's fine. Like I would disagree with the 12 apostles where you can have your own personal opinion, but it would not necessarily be the stance of the church. I think that because you're an apostle, what your stance is reflects the stance of the church already, and similar with your
No,
profession. No, it's
I
like
highly
that's just
disagree.
that's just like that's just the case. That's just the case. It is like you ask any of them, like you can't any ask any professional individual
Mhm.
and ask if their company has a guideline on them posting their own
Yes,
personal opinions, and there's definitely something that could get them removed if
of
it's
course,
because it reflects on the company as well, because you're a representative of that company.
of course.
And so it becomes, like ETFs, we don't even have that. But like even in my career, I can't always comment on things if I
Mhm.
want to, because again it reflects on the image of the company, and similarly with anyone else, it reflects on their image as a company as well. That's why I think that you can, when you say your own personal opinion, you have to be very careful on how it aligns with the church's opinion and official statement on it as well, because
Sure,
again you're a representative of that organization.
sure. But what I mean by that is it kind of brings me back to Joseph Smith and
Okay.
like this is so funny. And we're just talking about this kind of like in the later part of this pod, but where Joseph Smith is also just a man. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of one of his teachings where a bunch of new converts from England came by, and what he did was he got on his most ragged clothes and went to see them at the pier, and then the boats unloaded, and then one of the people that first came out to touch the American lands was this guy. And then Joseph Smith was like, so, like, why are you guys here? And the guy said, like, we are converts of the Mormon church. And then Joseph Smith
Mm-hmm.
asked, like, oh, it's like, so what is it, like, about the church? He's like, oh, they know about the church and that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. And then Joseph Smith
Okay.
asked him, so what if I were to tell you I am Joseph Smith? And the guy says to him, like, well, if you are who you say you are, sir, then I know that you are a prophet of God. And then Joseph Smith kind of like talks to the whole boatload of people, saying like that's I am just a man called of God, but I am
Mm-hmm.
primarily just a man as well. I have my own faults. I have my own ideas. And when I am addressing the congregation as a prophet of God, I am a prophet of God. But other
Right.
than those times, I am but a man who could be wrong if the weather is going to rain tomorrow or it's going to be sunny
Right.
or there's like whatever. And just like how that is with our 12, 15 apostles, um, people are also people that are able to make mistakes. If not, those are the 15
Yes.
perfect human beings in the world right now. So
That's why
they
they
are
have
allowed
public
to make,
relations managers.
but
Because
they
they
are allowed to make mistakes. It's
Right.
not like President Nelson. Like, I mean, I don't know his medical profession, like how
Mm-hmm.
successful he was, but I'm pretty sure it's not 100%. And it's not me saying that. It's not me saying that he's not a prophet of God. I mean, there's
Right.
so many different circumstances. There's so many I don't knows. And
Right.
so when they speak as a prophet, as an apostle of God, that is what they are. Other than those moments, they are just like you and me who need to go to the bathroom, who need to put on their pants one foot in front of the other. They're just like us. And so
Right.
I don't like, I don't know, like we got into this topic where like the level of perfection and like the laws, what we can see is so obvious, we should be able to try to fix as much as possible, or like certain obvious laws. Um, and there needs to be a level of like humbleness in which like we're not gonna know everything, but we're gonna try our absolute best. Like maybe the person that pushed Jason was also not a great person. But in this circumstance, what he's done is so appropriate for, I think, so appropriate for the circumstance. It's not even a question. Like he could have been dealing meth or whatever, right? But that is not relevant to what he did in this circumstance of defending himself and others.
Right.
Uh, but
It's gonna
I
be
just wanted like to
interesting.
really
Yeah,
push that in there.
yeah. It's good that you mentioned that. I think there is like I agree with you in principle of what should be. I'm hoping for like if this does, if
Well,
for
I need to
some
do my
weird way
part.
this ends up in court, I hope that the guy doesn't end up getting convicted
I mean,
because of it.
I
Because
feel like I
there's
need to do my part as well. In which, I mean, I didn't necessarily comment that Facebook post, and you got to pick and
right,
choose your battle. I mean, it
true,
is just a Facebook post, right? But it's concerning when I see how I see it is there's all these people commenting like the mob, like rage mob,
right,
about the lynching of this one guy when I think he did nothing wrong. And just imagine if like how much more complicated it is if the races were certain ways. Like no, that
right.
doesn't matter. These are the principles and this is how I see it. And I'm just hoping that we're getting to that point where people are better able to like maybe are able to think like me, like just to be honest, like that's how it is, right? I hope people are able to think more like me in these certain circumstances, and I recognize that I don't know everything. Like there could have been something more, like maybe I'll hear something. I'm not I
Right.
don't mind changing my mind on it
Uh-huh.
if there's some sort of new information. Maybe he was there to tell the people that like they can't perform or something. Maybe he was like an official, like all these things, right? Like that thing
Right.
could change my mind. That could change my mind. But from what it looks like, what it looks like is probably what it is. And so it's not that. It's probably just him, a crazy person trying to get up there for some clout or something.
Oh, I hope that it
But
does
who
end
knows?
up well for this person and this individual because, like you said, we need a lot of. Well, there's a lot of changes. One thing I'm grateful for, like I'm constantly grateful for, is the Constitution because,
Oh, the
yeah,
U.S.
well,
Constitution.
the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, because the founding fathers, if there's anything, Elder Dallin H. Oaks, who is a judge, was okay, past tense. He comments
Mm-hmm.
and says, it is God given. And you know why? The people who created this, who founded it, they knew they were imperfect people as well and that they did not know everything. And they
Mm-hmm.
made sure that they put in amendments to
Mm-hmm.
guarantee that everyone would be treated fairly. As we've just moved on, we've kind of moved far away from that. But like that was the basis of the Constitution, and everyone knows that because it is written there, loud and proud, how we need to defend everyone. And though we do not know everything, we put in these amendments to protect you and prevent you from being
Mm-hmm.
wrongfully incriminated. That's the beauty of the Constitution for me. Not every country has that right and privilege. Not every country is able to practice that. We do definitely not practice that in the Philippines because we know the Constitution, we know what it says, but it's not strongly enforced anymore. We've lost that
Well,
opportunity.
I think there's a difference, right, between the ideas, the principles of that document, and then the enforcement of it. So
Right.
I find what makes the United States a bit more unified, even in these ununified times, is just there is that idea that there was a civil war that kind of helped unite more the 13 colonies, and then
Right.
the various other wars, like the September 11 terrorist attack,
Yeah.
kind of
Maybe we
help
need to have our
unify
own
more people.
events like that.
It's not like I'm advocating for that, but I think
No.
being an American, there's certain things about it that uh, unifies Americans as a whole, from
All right.
like New York City to Hawaii, to Florida and California, east to west.
Right.
Um, it's something unique about it, and it's really hard to kind of put a dot on what makes somebody necessarily American. But I mean, yeah, I'm very lucky to be a citizen of this country. And like you were mentioning with
Yeah.
the Constitution, I believe the Constitution was heavily inspired in addition to the logic of man, heavily blessed from our creator himself.
Right. Well, that's all on my end. Any final? All right, final comments before we wrap this up.
Um, I think I don't know. This is kind of weird to say, but I'm thinking we should call out more things with common sense, be it in our social media lives as well as just things that we see in person. And I know it can be incredibly hard to do, especially with social media. And I'm not sure if this is even the correct way to do it, in which there is your personal social media, which obviously is your brand, but
Mhm.
maybe you should create another account in which you share your idea, like your true ideas, knowing it could have like it could backfire in certain ways. And it's kind of weird when I say this because it almost feels like you're working with a secret combination by having that second or third account. But I'm not quite sure where I stand on it. I just know that sometimes standing for what is correct would mean receiving that backlash. And receiving that backlash from a logical perspective would mean that you might lose out um, on certain opportunities for employers or networks. And I'm thinking at times like maybe that is necessary to stand up for what is right. And maybe you don't need to have that second social media account. But it's so much easier said than done. Like actually receiving those ramifications. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure what really would be best. It's just an idea in how to, I guess, combat some of the lies and like nonsensical things that I see over
Right.
in social media. Because some people can be really vindictive for you having a different opinion.
Yes.
Um, and they would stalk you, and then maybe other people that are going to be in danger.
All
And there's
right.
that idea that's like it's not impossible, but you like ruffle some feathers enough, and they're going to be eyeing on you and certain
Right.
issues that
Right.
would be happening that you've invited because you chose that battle. I don't know.
Yep.
It's one of those. It's kind of hard to. It kind of reminds me back on the thing that I said before, where if Jesus Christ was here on Earth, would he have a social media account? Yes, he would. He definitely would, and he would be making content. He wants to spread the word. He wants to spread, some of the common sense that he has seen to people, so that we can have a better, more fulfilling life.
Yep. My last comment would be to say that action speaks louder than words. If you believe strongly about one thing, show it through your actions, and there's a way to prove it, whether it be something big and tremendous or whether it be small. But I promise you that your actions won't go unnoticed in your community and with the people around you. You will slowly prove what is right and what ought to be. That's all. All right, that's all on our end. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you guys in a bit. Ciao.
All right. Take care.